I don't really need some.
Okay.
Okay. So in order to motivate some other topics, so Martin, UTA, as you know. If you don't, you haven't shown up to the lecture. Not good. You should know him. And also a guy who addresses the issues in many cases. He will be talking about his project, or his group's past project from last year, which was quite sophisticated in a way, and you will probably better be able to explain it better than I. What was so sophisticated about it?
Well, so one of the assignments we had to do was making a ball move based on the rotation of the phone, and so one of the project ideas was to extend that to make it like a bigger app. So we decided then to make Pong and then a multiplayer Pong, so each person controls their own paddle. So we used just the normal accelerometer and magnetic fields to do the direction of the paddle. So you move left, that goes down, etc. And we decided to use like peer-to-peer, so we don't have like the server as a middle ground. So you just have direct connection between clients. And we used Wi-Fi Direct for that, which was a lot of work, but we managed to do it. We also added a few extra features just to get above the requirements. Mainly.
That's very honest. Don't be too honest.
Okay, we didn't. But we also added just text-to-speech just for fun.
Did it work well?
Yes. Just was we managed to implement it in such a way that it's just a single function call with the string you wanted to read out. And we used it mainly to have like a debug chat to see if the connection worked. Then it also read out the sentences. We have some animations, dark mode, light mode, and localization as well. I think this one, which is just using different XML files, because one of the ways you use strings on, well, any UI element is to reference them through the IDs. So that's a nice way of doing localization. This is the why doesn't it play? Yeah. It doesn't want to play on Alpha. And we do it like this. This is supposed to be the game itself. So we didn't have enough time to complete it because I had to go away for personal reasons for a week. But so what we wanted to do was to have like a dedicated hosting and joining open lobbies. So you could either host a lobby, quote the name, whatever, and if you wanted to join, you could get a list of the open lobbies. But we didn't manage to get there, so instead we just dumped, like someone hosting would just dump every info instead of actually well, sorting it and just push button and connect. One of the difficulties with doing fun like this is every phone, every model at least, has different screen resolutions. So once we started figuring out how to do the connections, the issue was that on one screen the ball did go past the paddle, but on the other screen it bounced like an inch or so before the opponent's paddle. So we had to actually, this is the package we sent. Not showing. There we go. So we have to send the position of barrel, the position of the ball. Don't know why I had it on this byte, probably because I was tired. Synchronization with delta time, and we also sent over the size of the display and use that to scale up or scale down the positions based on the difference in your resolution versus their resolution. And as well, just if someone scored, notification pops up, and what your score versus the other one's score.
So we're always pick up this mandatory or
What do you mean by that?
I mean, now think about it in this way. I'm not sure what mine was, but anyway, you could make the screen size. You wouldn't want to necessarily send in all packages, right? So just better do it for sending initially, like once you confirm that it's the packet out of screen size. In a second, then you wouldn't need a second anymore, right? So you could make that one slightly more efficient, right?
Yeah, so like the initial setup is just like the initial info, and the rest of the package is just in the game loop itself is just without the screen. So you could do that. But again, we didn't have time for everything.
That would make it anyway, just one go down.
Yeah. So for the packages themselves, you have to do it like that. At least that's the way we used it. Basically, you have a byte array, and just for like an integer, it's 4 bytes, and then you need to bit shift and do some bit operations to get the individual bytes and put them into. It's probably an easier way to do it, but we did it this way. It worked. We passed. I don't remember which grade we get.
The point is just for the was fighting, right? So
yeah.
It wasn't on one hand all the complexity on the UI already with all the features and the version and so on, and second in the first place, but the point is it's just centered on the networking that ultimately. Because there's two things. On one hand, of course, the variety of custom encoding that you need to do in terms of the data structure and so on, but probably worse, getting synchronization over Wi-Fi direct coding, right?
Yeah.
Because it's peer-to-peer, no infrastructure, it's two phones, and they talk directly to each other. And everyone has Wi-Fi direct, which is I think outside of the Wi-Fi standard, isn't it? That is basically not home Wi-Fi, basically, but and Google's implementation of it. And then you have to go slightly harder, because you go to the host, it's finding all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You do that on the stuff. So quite interesting. How many people did you?
We were 3 people.
3 people. So
I did mainly the networking. That's
so,
hours.
For them, it was a good way of actually separating the regions, right? So
yeah.
in game phase, the networking is like UI or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? So if you want to try something this direction as well, at least given what you need some data, not necessarily do that for real time, right?
Yeah.
Which of course is again still quite hard. Then this is also part of the down. So you need to know about, right? How it works, how you exactly can do it. So for that it works.
Yeah. So this is of course using Wi-Fi, but you also can use Bluetooth, for example.
True. That would be another effect. Yes, better. Well, the legacy is higher.
I wonder how it would be if you do use that that NFC technology.
Yeah.
See if you could maybe try something there.
You told me the host device to host, right?
With the NFC?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
No, it is Android TV. That would be. I where you host the phone together.
Maybe.
But they're very short. They probably work with the compression law. So I
yeah.
think even harder, like you can't have those like
yeah, I mean, most of these things you could probably just compress into shorts using only 2 bytes, maybe even only 1, depending. Because you don't need, like, the screen size. Do you have phones with 4K resolution? Maybe? Close to? But still, that's still a lot less than the matching the size of an integer. So you could squeeze a lot of data if you want to like streamline it as much as you possibly could. Yeah. Is there any more specifications? Yeah.
So that's one some pathways. So thinking about using direct communication in a way, dealing with you did a lot of stuff, didn't you?
We also had high score using Firebase. I don't remember how well that worked, but yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Wrestling with PPP. Oh yeah.
You remember that? Cool. Well, thank you very much. Questions? No? Yes. Okay. So a few things that I want to inject from last year. Sorry, stream. It didn't quite work as expected. So a few other projects that we had in the past year that I want to just highlight. Unfortunately, not with resources. We didn't require people to submit resources as in. But just for the sake of discussing and thinking about it. So there were a few other pathways because you need to figure out where you want to have the complexity of your model, right? So is it just the functionality you're doing, also how you're doing it? And one of the ideas was to perhaps do file sharing using IPFS, which is kind of a persistent, it's kind of similar to, blockchain-based file sharing in the widest sense. So having persistent files stored on a blockchain, and you allow that basically to submit files and basically retrieve them without being able to modify them. The other thing was to have a chat app, which you can do via Firebase. I think it's not the most sophisticated thing on the planet, but you could probably bump it up by having media sharing across the different devices. That could be quite helpful. Marsh put out an idea of an Android Ethereum client, but yeah. So if you want to go down that route, that would be more native projects, native as in C++, or Golang projects that you can do. But some aspects that were quite noteworthy from last year that were actually more sophisticated than expected were a game, phrase drawing game. Basically, the idea is that you have kind of, ideally in a peer-to-peer fashion, describe what you describe an item. Basically, it's a kind of child's game. Basically, write down what you want to convey, and then the receiving party needs to draw that, share the drawing with the next receiving party, and hope that they actually correctly identify or guess what we actually mean by the phrase. So it's kind of a children game you can explore, so-called phrase drawing game that you. If you want to do that, that's quite challenging because you have a closed circle of individuals actually sharing information via mobile phones. If you want to put it off, of course, peer-to-peer would be cool, but I think Wi-Fi would be equally fine in this particular case. But the idea is basically that you make up a word or a phrase, write it down. The next player needs to get that phrase and then draw accordingly, and then close the loop basically by figuring out in how far the original word and the the original word could be reconstructed from the drawing. So it depends how many players you have in the game. The more complex get, the more complex the points get. Yeah.
Yeah, at least for the Norwegians, if have you heard about the game the board game? That's basically that much just in mobile app.
So basically, that's one angle. What else do we have? Yeah, we had various variants of logbooks. So if you're falling for specific sports, such as diving, or even worse, skydiving, or anything else really. So, and you need to keep track for professional reasons, for example, of your progress, what you did. So there are usually fixed format specifications of what you note down. For example, for
For diving, you would note down start time, end time, size of tank, your weights that you wore at that time, your diving profile. So it actually gets quite complex in terms of measuring your progress. And it's both to document your experience, but also to lend support in case there's an emergency. You actually know what happens or what happened previously or how this person generally behaves and what oxygen consumption they have and so on. So there's a lot of aspects of information management in a wider sense, but diverse notion of information that needs to be managed as well. Because you can pictures, you can have data input, you can have drawn graphs and so on. Similar for skydiving. So that's also another pathway. If you have any of those things in mind, so purposes that you could potentially produce output for, you're more than welcome to do that, of course, as well. So that would quite well. We had some people doing work for cognitive behavioral therapy, where you basically have a set of cards and have people, I don't know the details to be honest, I would need to read it up myself, that basically you're subjected to a situation with a virtual card and then you can express thought, feeling, consequences and so on, and then you can reflect over it and write down the response basically and store that all on the phone. So basically, instead of having a massive card set in CBT, you would basically carry it around with you and have it locally on your phone, right? So I think it was in conjunction with some with Helse that they did it. But this basically was a bit more UI centric, but it was actually about dealing with complex layouts of UI, for example, emulating this kind of card ordering mechanism in a way. So what they did quite nicely though, they laid out their requirements very explicitly. So it was really quite nice to see that and visualize it as well. So they can visualize the event, the beliefs that you were associated with this, the consequences, and then what you learned from it basically in that very app. So it was pretty much more on the side of doing, having some psychological use, I guess, as well. So if you find any practice or theory and so on that you feel relates and you can represent in mobile devices or want to carry along instead of having a physical variant, that's also an option. Last one I want to highlight, which is really, really helpful, a really cool idea, was GitHub Sketch Uploader. So I mentioned that before already, but the idea is that we always learn how to actually construct systems using drawings, right? For example, class diagrams and the like. But usually they get lost along the development pathway, right? So when we submit the results, we submit code, we manage it nicely, have nice commits and all that beautiful stuff. But we actually lose track of the documentation, especially if it's in graphical form, right? And here the idea was basically, well, if you draw something on paper, even if it's just for brainstorming purposes, how can you efficiently store it together with the application of choice, right? The obvious choice would be to take a picture, of course, but that would be like 5 megs or whatever current phone cameras give away of storage in your GitHub repository, which you can do. But here the idea was to introduce a bit of post-processing, so actually break down the complexity and compress it by reducing, for example, the color depth to monochrome, if you like, or 16 colors or something. So the storage gets much more efficient and actually makes sense to keep the sketches alongside with the actual code. And then the other challenge was, of course, to actually upload it to GitHub, for example. So you actually need to interact and work with the GitHub API as well, which is also a non-trivial task. So that's also one possible pathway. I think this has been done by a single person, actually, this one. So it was a quite ambitious project for an individual participant. So it's also an option. Anyway, those are the few ones I wanted to highlight here. There are, of course, the more typical ones, such as having a app that keeps track of a movie or TV series. But it needs to have a bit more complexity about it in the concept. So, perhaps keep progress of actually watching and communicating time codes, for example, where you last been, to which extent you have been watching perhaps. Perhaps you can, if you have a Netflix account, perhaps link it to the API and get your info out of there and display that one. So bypassing a bit of the Netflix functionality for that purpose, for that matter, or integrating it to some extent, saying what did I saw in my own app, and link it to IMDb, for example. So do it more on the web service side and integrate it via UI. That would be also a kind of sophisticated approach. So there's quite a bit of pathways you can take it down. Another app was about color blindness app, but this was a very specific experiment for the color lab, which I believe is has been solved to some extent, so there's probably no need to reconstruct that app. One app that was demanded for last time, I don't think it was done, was basically the Get Started app that was asked for by Student Target, or the international office rather, and they actually wanted to find ways of communicating to our students to interact a bit like Finn style. If they, for example, have old kitchen equipment and so on, you want to share with new coming students, or the new coming students need more orientation or things like this, that this can be managed via an app that is basically given to all international students, so they immediately find the right information, right? As opposed to figuring out, oh, whom do they actually need to talk to, and figuring out Finn, for example, as a potential pathway of doing that. So I don't think this app had been done last year, so it may also be an opportunity to jump on that one and see how you get. But this is, of course, a bit more front-end centric to some extent, right? So, but you can make it quite sophisticated by having different types of roles, having new coming students, leaving students, having an admin that oversees and communicates and coordinates different students. So there's opportunity to expand this. If any interest persists, I could try to figure out the contact again and see. They're most certainly still interested in that kind of app. If there's not even a new concept that you guys could introduce, especially your internationals, of course, you would have some first-hand insight as into what you need, or would have needed rather. Now it's too late. Sorry. When you arrived here. So that's also an option, of course, as well, right? So if you see inspiration from there, yes, of course, anything goes. Cool. So that basically was my overview of the portfolio that we had in the past, in particular. And I think there's also some technical inspiration from Martin here of what has been done in the past. So looking at the level, how far you can push it. So we've encouraged you to, use that as an idea input. We can't really force you into an idea. Well, now I will force you into an idea, because if you don't do any of those, you know which app you're going to make. And apparently the API of YouTube is relatively easy. Martin figured that out already. So it should be also feasible for individual fighters if they don't know the project. Anyone with a question or thoughts or ideas, perhaps new ideas, especially ones that aren't committed yet, of course. You guys in the back, some ideas? No? What are you looking for? A game more, or? You prefer the classical assignment style project, right? Right. Yeah, okay. So that could be another pathway. Yeah, we can make it quite explicit. I think that would be really a nice opportunity. In fact, you can expand the variant on this one by making it also compatible with GitLab. Because of course, GitHub is only one of the possible pathways to take it, but having GitLab with a different API could make it interestingly challenging to actually allow submission, or make it generic so it kind of works with all of them. For example, if you require interaction via SSH. But of course, okay, let's do that one. So we'd be really keen to see that app anyway. And then we can probably even use that in system entwicklung. So in the, I think, second semester course, right, is it? Oh, you mean the phrase drawing? Yeah, that's also. So I post both of those ideas into the wiki, and then you can refine that and review that and use it. Yes. So part of the thing is of this course as well. We want to give a tentative idea of scope, but we don't necessarily want to harden the scope itself, because you need to be independently able to delineate scope. In your bachelor, you will have that task ahead of you, because you need to know how much can I see. That's one of the skills you need to take on. Of course, working into what we want is to do this right, because we do it for you, the scope is nice, we have a requirement explicitly. Guess what? Those guys here, just now, that are doing the bachelor's now, they got a set of requirements, right? that set of requirements, right? But we didn't tell them priority. Just over time said, oh no, we can't priority now, right? So the idea was to basically expose them to real life experiences because that's how it's done. The client doesn't necessarily know what they actually want. They know what they want, but they don't really know how to break it down properly and what to do as part of it, right? That's the challenge that you guys, for example, have talking to an external client. You kind of need to gauge and figure out what do they actually want, right? What can we actually do? And what is important, what is actually not so important, what they think is important, but what they actually need to do to achieve that, right? So, and similarly here, so of course we can specify explicitly, but again it goes up to that stage where it's about you, and this is you have to put that you actually figure out what you want to do, and we check your scope, of course, to make it sensible and sane. Sometimes not quite sane, but that's up to the student, of course. But we would like you to kind of step forward and say, yep, that's right, we want to take it, and we want to disentangle it and see what the fund actually sees in the process. That's a bit of a system analysis while being developing that's the idea of this open-ended project specification. Because we want to move away from the fixed assignment specification, which we evidently had in the past, so the last year about it, right? So we clear this is what you want to do what you're supposed to solve. The only thing that we require you is to step out of your boundaries in the sense that you look at new tech, hopefully, as part of mobile development, that you have some storage, some interaction, some sensors ideally involved, but you can compensate that by complexity in other areas, right? So if you don't have a massive amount of sensors and instead do Wi-Fi direct, well, then, that's fine. But I'll post those ideas so you can look at it. It'd be good when all of you, so that's the thing, that's homework. For the end of the week, please commit to something and or discuss it at least beforehand. So we have, by the end of the week, have something to go into that. And then write this down on the project page, both your groups. So for you guys, please put your names to the Pepper OS one. In the wiki, it's under project, sorry, here. So by editing the wiki. So you all should have access to the wiki. All of you can access the wiki directly. So you can change all the teaching material if you like. Don't do it, it's version, we know who did it. So, but you can all edit the wiki in general. So feel free, just follow the pattern. Once you guys are comfortable with Markdown, everyone? Some of you? Well, if not, it's relatively straightforward. That's like the wiki syntax, right? So, and that's basically while it's rendered nicely in the UI, this is how it looks. You click on the edit button and you basically just copy that pattern and modify it and preview the whole document and then just save it, right? Preview and you see how it looks like and then save the outcome. Here's the pattern. You can just copy and adapt and save the changes at the end and then it's stored. So just do it and describe the requirements you have in mind explicitly. I would recommend you do it in the way that you say hard requirements, soft requirements, right? Or, the core requirements and then nice to haves or something like that. That's the idea. So please try to commit to this. If you have questions regarding the cybersecurity game, contact me or Matsaya directly. He's a PhD student in the security department downstairs. Who's doing that. And yeah, please figure out what you want and put it there. Else we need to talk and then hone in on something, or narrow it down to something that actually works. So we have a few candidates that we can use for that purpose. So use those as inspirations. Or ideally come up with something that you think actually makes sense to you. Questions? After my waterfall talk. As usual. Don't worry, be rid of me soon. Still, some questions. Hang on. Yes, sorry, you. Sorry. So we plan to have, there will be a bit more talks. I think we'll invite Richard Barlow, who's running the game programming course next semester for anyone who progresses in the third year next semester. And he will talk, I think, about a bit VR and mobile devices. That's the intent, at least, or AR, or and some of the gamification services that Google provides that you can use. For example, to have scoreboards and things like that. So there will be some lectures around that kind of topic. So that's the idea. Yeah. But of course, there's not much time left realistically. So, but just to wrap it up, and afterwards, I think the last week then it will be all presentations basically, right? So it will be of you wrapping up your projects and then having a long session. We usually do it in one long session where you guys have 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, including QA, and then you present your respective project, get some feedback, and we get some impression what you did, and then we go away and think about it. So I look at it as well. And yeah, so it will also be an interesting side because we also want to introduce a peer grading on this level. It's a lot harder, so it actually doesn't quite work, but we want to get an impression what you guys actually think by giving reviews, because then it's anonymized, so we get more honest feedback. But that is probably one of the pathways as well. We want to kind of make the course a bit self-monitoring. Cool. Yeah, so valid question, there will be something going on afterwards. Not tomorrow though, so I wouldn't expect, so just, you know, work on your project, decide on your project plan, sleep in, whatever you want to do, right? So, but Mariusz may most likely post some resources you can look at, or videos or the like, because he's not here. But there will be no explicit class tomorrow, just for you guys and for you guys as well on the show. So, yeah.
I added previous year's suggestion also, just on a list from the bottom.
Right. I might edit more Sunday this year. Yeah, you edited this year, right?
Yeah.
Ah, cool. Thank you, Raj. So it's all done. Yeah. Thanks for doing my work. So yeah, the Smart added the list of past year's projects, so you can just hop on those ones and seek inspiration or adopt them, right? But please make your own project sessions. Those are just the ideas, right? You make your own project description briefly. It's just to know what you're actually doing, the priorities. I leave it at that for now. People that had review issues, DM me, direct message me in Discord. Say which review, the first one or the second one, and what specific issues, and then we can dig down and figure it out. We want to have in the future a notification mechanism, so you can actually ping, pong, and verify with the actual writer/reviewer, but we don't have that feature yet, so that's the thing. So use DM for that purpose, direct message in Discord. Or if you're comfortable enough, use issues on the issue tracker, but that is probably a bit verbose in a way. So DM is probably the preferable choice. Cool, I think I'll leave it at this.